17 months. That's all it took to create one of the darkest, most psychologically complex games Nintendo has ever released. But here's what nobody tells the full story about. Majora's Mask wasn't born from time constraints alone. The game that followed Ocarina of Time wasn't just a quick sequel slapped together with recycled assets. It was a deliberate philosophical response, a shadow cast by the brightest hero's journey, and a creative gamble that transformed limitation into one of gaming's most haunting experiences. The connection between these two games runs far deeper than shared character models and the same game engine. Understanding this relationship reveals not just how games are made, but why certain stories can only exist in response to others. November 21, 1998. Ocarina of Time released in Japan, becoming an instant phenomenon. The game sold over 7.6 million copies worldwide and earned perfect scores from publications like Famitsu. Players experienced something revolutionary, the first fully three-dimensional Zelda adventure, complete with Z-targeting combat, time travel mechanics, and a sprawling version of Hyrule that felt alive. Link's journey from forest child to legendary hero captured imaginations globally, establishing the template for 3D action-adventure games that developers still reference today. But success creates pressure. Nintendo needed to capitalize on Ocarina of Time's momentum while the Nintendo 64 still dominated living rooms. The original plan involved Zelda, a remixed version of Ocarina designed for the 64DD peripheral, featuring redesigned dungeons and altered layouts. Director Eiji Aonuma, who had been responsible for Ocarina's dungeon design, found the prospect uninspiring. Simply reshuffling existing content didn't excite him creatively. That's when Shigeru Miyamoto issued a challenge that would define the next chapter of Zelda history. Miyamoto asked Aonuma a simple question: could the team create an entirely new Zelda game in 1 year using Ocarina of Time's existing engine and assets? The proposition was audacious. Ocarina of Time took over 4 years to develop, going through multiple delays and consuming enormous resources. Creating a full sequel in 12 months seemed impossible. Yet Aonuma, working alongside co-director Yoshiaki Koizumi and a smaller development team, accepted the challenge. Development began in early 1999, with programming starting in February. The team finished Majora's Mask in 15 months, still remarkably fast by any standard. The game released in Japan on April 27, 2000, just 17 months after Ocarina of Time's Japanese launch. North America received it on October 26, 2000. This aggressive schedule resulted in significant crunch, mandatory overtime that pushed the development team to their limits. The writers, exhausted from endless hours, even inserted complaints about overwork directly into the game's script as a form of creative protest. Reusing Ocarina of Time's assets wasn't just a time-saving shortcut, it became the foundation for Majora's Mask's most distinctive quality. The game takes familiar character models, enemy designs, and environmental elements from Hyrule and transplants them into Termina, creating an unsettling sense of déjà vu. Players encounter what looks like Ingo from Lon Lon Ranch running Romani Ranch. Talon's model appears as the mayor of Clocktown. The Gerudo witches Kotake and Komi run a potion shop. Even the Composer brothers from Ocarina's graveyard return as ghosts in Ikana Canyon. This wasn't laziness or lack of creativity. According to Aonuma in an interview with Game Informer, the team deliberately wanted to do different things with the character models from Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask has a different tone, and the developers could be more expressive with characters in Termina than they were in Hyrule. The familiar yet wrong aesthetic reinforced the game's central theme. Termina exists as a twisted reflection of Hyrule, a parallel world where everything feels slightly off, slightly darker, slightly more desperate. The connection between these two games begins with Link himself. Ocarina of Time ends with Princess Zelda using the ocarina to send Link back to his childhood, allowing him to reclaim the 7 years he lost while sealed in the Sacred Realm. He becomes a child again, but he retains all the memories of his adult experiences, defeating Ganondorf, witnessing the destruction of Hyrule, and bearing the weight of being the hero of time. The game's ending shows Link meeting young Zelda, presumably warning her about Ganondorf's betrayal before it happens. Then, in the final shot, Navi floats away through a window, leaving Link behind. Majora's Mask opens in the Lost Woods with Link searching for Navi. This setup establishes Link's psychological state. He's lost, wandering, searching for the companion who guided him through his greatest adventure. He's experienced things no child should experience, faced evil that would break most adults, and saved an entire kingdom. But now, nobody knows what he did. The timeline where he was an adult hero no longer exists in his reality. He's just a kid in a forest, looking for a fairy. The Skull Kid's attack happens immediately. Link gets knocked off Epona, his horse is stolen, and he's transformed into a Deku Scrub, powerless, vulnerable, reduced to something weak and helpless. This transformation strips away everything Link earned in Ocarina of Time. His legendary sword? Gone. His hero's tunic? Useless. His very identity as the hero of time? Meaningless in Termina, where nobody knows him and nobody cares about his past accomplishments. Termina itself represents a stark departure from Hyrule's epic scope. According to developer statements, Ocarina of Time's Hyrule drew inspiration from medieval Europe, while Majora's Mask's Termina took influence from Southeast Asia, creating a distinct cultural and aesthetic identity. Where Hyrule felt like a traditional fantasy kingdom, Termina feels like a dying world, smaller, more intimate, and suffused with melancholy. The 3-day cycle mechanic emerged from this thematic foundation. Yoshiaki Koizumi had been developing a concept for a game where players would experience a compact world repeatedly. When Aonuma asked for help meeting Miyamoto's challenge, Koizumi brought this idea to Majora's Mask. The result was a 72-hour countdown until the moon destroys Termina. Early in development, the team considered a 7-day cycle, but ultimately settled on 3 days to maintain constant tension. This time loop isn't just a mechanical gimmick, it's the game's emotional core. Ocarina of Time presented a linear hero's journey where Link grows from child to adult, collects medallions, and defeats evil in a straightforward narrative arc. Majora's Mask subverts this completely. Players can't simply progress through the story, they must experience failure repeatedly. The moon will fall, Termina will be destroyed, everyone will die. Then Link plays the Song of Time, resets to the dawn of the first day, and tries again, with the knowledge that everything he just accomplished, every person he helped, every problem he solved, will be undone. The emotional weight of this system reveals itself through Clocktown's citizens. Each character follows a schedule across the 3 days. Anju and Kafe, 2 lovers separated by the Skull Kid's curse, spend the entire cycle trying to reunite before the world ends. Their story spans multiple side quests, requiring players to observe their routines, understand their relationships, and intervene at precise moments to help them achieve a joyous wedding even as apocalypse looms. According to developer statements, this questline was specifically designed to highlight the contrast between a joyous occasion and impending cataclysm. The comparison between companions illuminates Link's changed circumstances. Navi in Ocarina of Time was helpful, guiding, and supportive. She warned Link about dangers, offered strategic advice, and provided companionship throughout his journey. Tattle, Majora's Mask's fairy companion, is abrasive, sarcastic, and often reluctant. She's only with Link because she got separated from her brother Tail and needs Link's help to find him. This shift reflects Link's matured state. He doesn't need a gentle guide anymore. He's already a hero. He knows how to fight, solve puzzles, and face impossible odds. Tattle's harsh personality suggests Link has moved beyond needing reassurance. The transformation masks represent this new relationship with power. In Ocarina of Time, Link collected items and grew stronger linearly. In Majora's Mask, the 3 transformation masks, Deku, Goron, and Zora, fundamentally change Link's abilities and appearance. The Deku mask turns him into a Deku Scrub, allowing him to skip across water and shoot bubbles. The Goron mask makes him powerful and rolling, able to break rocks and withstand extreme heat. The Zora mask transforms him into a guitarist who can swim rapidly and use his fins as weapons. These transformations aren't just new abilities, they're identities. Link becomes the Deku Butler's son who died in the Lost Woods. He becomes Darmani, a Goron hero who failed to save Snowhead. He becomes Mikau, a Zora guitarist who died protecting his people. Each mask carries the weight of someone else's death, someone else's failure. Link literally wears the faces of the dead, taking on their unfinished business and their grief. The transformation sequences show Link in apparent pain, screaming silently as his body contorts and changes. Wearing others' deaths isn't comfortable, it's agonizing. The dungeons reflect this different philosophy. Ocarina of Time featured 9 main dungeons, elaborate multi-floor labyrinths filled with complex puzzles and multiple mini-bosses. Majora's Mask contains only 4 main dungeons: Woodfall Temple, Snowhead Temple, Great Bay Temple, and Stone Tower Temple. Each corresponds to one of the 4 regions of Termina and houses one of the 4 giants who can stop the moon. This reduced dungeon count reinforced the game's focus on characters and side quests over pure dungeon exploration.
Stone Tower Temple deserves special attention. Located in Ikana Canyon, the region associated with death and undead enemies, this dungeon can be inverted completely. Players use the Elegy of Emptiness to create statues of themselves, then flip the entire tower upside down using the light arrows. This inversion mechanic extends the game's thematic obsession with twisted reflections and alternate perspectives. The temple features Triforce imagery that appears right side up when the tower is inverted, leading to fan speculation about Ikona's relationship with Hyrule's sacred symbol. Speaking of the Triforce, its near absence from Majora's Mask is deliberate and meaningful. Ocarina of Time centered entirely on the Triforce. Ganondorf sought it, Zelda protected it, and Link ultimately used its power to seal Ganondorf away. In Majora's Mask, the Triforce barely appears. The game takes place in Termina, not Hyrule, so the Golden Goddess's artifact holds no power here. This absence reinforces that Link can't rely on destiny or divine providence. He's operating outside the sacred narrative that defined his previous adventure. Termina's catastrophe isn't about the Triforce or the eternal battle between good and evil. It's about a lonely Skull Kid with a powerful mask. The Skull Kid himself embodies the game's themes of isolation and abandonment. He's not inherently evil. According to the game's backstory, the Skull Kid was friends with the 4 giants who protected Termina, but the giants eventually left him to fulfill their duties. Feeling abandoned, the Skull Kid grew bitter and lonely. When he encountered the happy mask salesman and stole Majora's Mask, the mask's malevolent power amplified his grief and resentment into destructive rage. The real villain isn't the Skull Kid, it's Majora's Mask itself, an ancient artifact of unknown origin that feeds on negative emotions. This contrasts sharply with Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time. Ganondorf had clear motivations. The Gerudo lived in a harsh desert and he coveted Hyrule's prosperity. His ambition drove him to swear fealty to the King of Hyrule, then betray that trust to seize the Triforce. He was evil, but he was understandable. Majora's Mask offers no such clarity. The mask's origins remain mysterious. Its motivations, if it even has coherent motivations beyond causing suffering, are never explained. It's alien, incomprehensible, and terrifying precisely because players never fully understand it. The final battle reinforces this. After the 4 giants stop the moon from falling, Majora's Mask abandons the Skull Kid and possesses the moon itself. Link enters the moon and finds a surreal, peaceful meadow with a single tree where masked children play. This dreamlike space contains the game's most challenging optional content, 4 mini-dungeons that each focus on a transformation mask. Completing all 4 yields the Fierce Deity's Mask, the most powerful item in the entire game. The Fierce Deity transformation deserves analysis. When Link wears this mask, he becomes an adult warrior wielding a double helix sword, capable of firing magical beams that devastate enemies. The transformation visually resembles adult Link from Ocarina of Time, but darker and more powerful. Some fans interpret the Fierce Deity as Link's adult self from the erased timeline, the hero who defeated Ganondorf but then was sent back to childhood, manifesting in Termina as pure combat potential divorced from heroic purpose. Whether this interpretation is accurate or not, the mask represents ultimate power achieved through collecting and mastering all other masks, through experiencing every identity, every death, every grief that Termina contains.
The mask system itself shows how Majora's Mask recontextualized Ocarina's items. In Ocarina of Time, Link collected tools, hookshot, bow, bombs, boomerang. Each served specific purposes in dungeons and combat. In Majora's Mask, the 24 masks players can collect aren't just tools, they're stories. The cafe mask helps find a missing person. The couple's mask represents uniting lovers. The Kamaro mask teaches Link the dance of a deceased performer. Each mask connects to a side quest, a character, or a tragedy. Collecting them all requires engaging deeply with Termina's inhabitants, learning their schedules, understanding their problems, and intervening in their lives. This focus on NPCs represents a conscious design choice. According to interviews, the developers wanted to expand on minor characters from Ocarina of Time and give more insight into their lives. In Ocarina, most NPCs served functional purposes. They sold items, gave hints, or provided story exposition. In Majora's Mask, NPCs have routines, relationships, and complex emotional lives. The postman delivers mail obsessively as the world ends, torn between duty and survival. Gorman, the circus troupe leader, drinks himself into oblivion after his performers flee. These aren't just quest givers, they're people facing existential dread in their own ways. The game's exploration of grief operates on multiple levels. The 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, manifest throughout Clocktown. On the first day, many citizens are in denial, insisting the moon won't actually fall. By the second day, anger and fear spread as the moon grows larger. The third day brings depression and resignation as people accept the inevitable. Link's ability to reset time allows players to witness these emotional progressions repeatedly, understanding how different people process impending doom differently. This thematic depth emerged partly from the development team's own experiences. Eiji Aonuma stated in interviews that players of Ocarina of Time had grown up somewhat between 1998 and 2000 and could be motivated by emotions like sadness and regret rather than just traditional heroic triumph. The team wanted to create something that respected their audience's maturation. The result was a game that trusted players to handle mature themes, loss, death, futility, and the search for meaning in a world that might end at any moment. The music reinforces these themes. Composer Koji Kondo, who created Ocarina of Time's iconic score, returned for Majora's Mask alongside Toru Minagishi. The soundtrack primarily consists of reworked music from Ocarina of Time, but recontextualized to feel more melancholy and unsettling. Clocktown's theme exists in 3 variations, one for each day. On the first day, the music sounds relatively upbeat and busy. On the second day, the tempo increases slightly, creating subtle tension. By the third day, the music becomes frantic and desperate, perfectly capturing the escalating panic as the moon looms overhead. The Song of Healing, learned from the Happy Mask Salesman, serves as the game's emotional anchor. This melody transforms troubled souls into masks, allowing Link to ease other suffering by taking on their pain himself. It's somber, gentle, and tinged with sadness, a stark contrast to Ocarina of Time's more triumphant themes. Every transformation mask Link acquires comes from playing the Song of Healing for a suffering soul. The Deku Butler's son, Darmani, Mikau. The song doesn't prevent their deaths, it provides peace after the fact, transforming tragedy into something useful while acknowledging that the tragedy still happened. The relationship between both games extends to gameplay philosophy. Ocarina of Time emphasized exploration of a vast overworld. Hyrule Field connected different regions, and players could spend hours just wandering, finding secrets, and enjoying the sense of adventure. Majora's Mask deliberately constrains this. Termina Field is smaller and less central to the experience. The game pushes players towards Clocktown and its surrounding regions, Woodfall Swamp, Snowhead Mountain, Great Bay Coast, and Ikana Canyon, each focused and dense with content rather than sprawling. This constraint wasn't a compromise, it was liberation. With a smaller world and less emphasis on exploration for its own sake, the developers could create depth instead of breadth. Every NPC matters. Every side quest connects to larger themes. The game trusts players to engage with its systems deeply rather than superficially. You can't just rush through Majora's Mask collecting heart pieces and checking boxes. The 3-day cycle demands attention, observation, and emotional investment. The sales figures reflect this different approach. Majora's Mask sold 3.36 million copies worldwide, impressive by any standard, but less than half of Ocarina of Time's 7.6 million. The game released late in the Nintendo 64's lifespan, as the PlayStation 2 launched, competing for attention in a changing market. Additionally, Majora's Mask required the expansion pack, a memory upgrade peripheral that raised the entry cost. Not every Nintendo 64 owner had one, limiting the potential audience. But raw sales don't tell the complete story. Majora's Mask developed an intense cult following. Players who connected with its dark atmosphere, emotional depth, and unconventional structure praised it as the best Zelda game. Those who preferred Ocarina's more traditional approach found Majora's Mask frustrating and oppressive. This polarization continues today. No Zelda game generates more passionate debate than Majora's Mask. It's simultaneously beloved and controversial, praised and criticized, often by the same people depending on what aspect they're discussing. The game's legacy influenced how Nintendo approached future Zelda titles. Wind Waker's cel-shaded art style represented a different kind of bold artistic choice. Twilight Princess incorporated darker themes while returning to more traditional structure. Skyward Sword explored the series' origin story, but none of these games quite captured Majora's specific alchemy, that perfect storm of creative constraint, thematic ambition, and willingness to make players uncomfortable. The modern Zelda era adds new context to understanding both games. Breath of the Wild in 2017 revolutionized the series by making exploration absolutely central, giving players freedom to tackle challenges in any order. Tears of the Kingdom in 2023 expanded this with construction mechanics and layered world design. These games share Ocarina of Time's emphasis on player agency and exploration, but they also incorporate Majora's Mask's focus on environmental storytelling and NPC depth. The stable NPCs in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, for instance, have schedules and routines reminiscent of Termina's citizens. The 3DS remake of Majora's Mask, released in February 2015, introduced the game to a new generation. Director Eiji Aonuma and developer Grezzo, who had previously remade Ocarina of Time 3D, kept what Aonuma called a "what in the world" list, moments that felt unreasonable or alienating to players. The remake addressed many of these issues with quality-of-life improvements, better save systems, streamlined mechanics, and refined boss battles. Yet, the core experience remained intact: the 3-day cycle, the masks, the pervasive melancholy, and the clock forever counting down. Understanding the connection between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask illuminates both games more fully. Ocarina presents the archetypal hero's journey. A chosen one discovers his destiny, gathers power, faces evil, and triumphs. It's aspirational, empowering, and ultimately optimistic about the hero's role in the world. Majora's Mask asks what comes after. What happens when the hero's journey ends but the hero remains? What does it cost to save the world, and who remembers what you sacrificed? Can heroism exist without recognition, without destiny, without the comfortable framework of good versus evil? These questions give Majora's Mask its enduring power. The game suggests that true heroism isn't about fulfilling prophecy or claiming divine artifacts. It's about helping people simply because they need help, even when nobody will remember, even when time itself will erase your accomplishments. Link saves Termina not because he's the hero of time, but because he's someone who can't walk away from suffering. The 3-day cycle means most people he helps will forget he helped them. Only Link remembers. Only Link carries the weight of all those timelines where he didn't arrive in time, where the moon fell, where everyone died. This psychological burden makes Majora's Mask the perfect companion piece to Ocarina of Time. Together, they present a complete portrait of heroism, the glory and the cost, the triumph and the trauma, the destiny fulfilled and the loneliness that follows. Ocarina of Time shows why people want to be heroes. Majora's Mask shows what being a hero actually demands. The creative circumstances that produced Majora's Mask, 17 months, a smaller team, aggressive deadlines, reused assets, forced innovation rather than inhibiting it. Constraints can be creative engines when wielded by talented artists with clear vision. Eiji Aonuma and Yoshiaki Koizumi took Shigeru Miyamoto's challenge and created something that honored Ocarina of Time while completely subverting it. They used the same tools to tell a fundamentally different story, proving that technology and assets matter less than the ideas animating them. This lesson resonates throughout gaming history. The best sequels don't just repeat what worked, they examine it, question it, and explore what the original left unsaid. Majora's Mask succeeds because it had something to say about Ocarina of Time, about hero narratives, about the cost of adventure. The connection between these games isn't just technical or commercial, it's philosophical and emotional. Link's search for Navi frames Majora's Mask, but the game never provides closure on that quest. After saving Termina, defeating Majora's Mask, and witnessing the Skull Kid regain his senses, Link simply rides away on Epona. The game ends with the happy mask salesman departing and the Skull Kid promising to be friends with Tattle and Tail again. Link's resolution happens off-screen, unknown to players. Did he ever find Navi? We never learn. Perhaps that ambiguity is the point. Some journeys don't have tidy endings. Some searches continue long after the story stops showing them. What remains undeniable is this. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask together represent one of gaming's most successful artistic partnerships. One game couldn't exist without the other. Ocarina established the foundation, technically, mechanically, and narratively. Majora's Mask built a different structure on that foundation, proving that the same pieces can assemble into vastly different experiences when guided by different creative visions. The truth about their connection isn't just that they share assets or engines, it's that they share a soul, split between light and shadow, between destiny and choice, between the hero the world needs and the person that hero actually is. 17 months created a legacy that endures 24 years later. Players still debate Majora's Mask's meaning, still discover new details in its intricate web of side quests, still feel the weight of that descending moon. The game's influence appears in titles that embrace darkness, ambiguity, and emotional complexity, from Dark Souls' oppressive atmospheres to Outer Wilds' time loop mechanics. But no game has quite replicated what Majora's Mask achieved, a perfect storm of constraint and creativity, a deliberate rejection of its predecessor's formula that somehow enhanced that predecessor's legacy, and a meditation on heroism that dared to ask whether saving the world is enough to save yourself. The connection between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask teaches us that great art often emerges from dialogue, one work responding to another, building on what came before while challenging its assumptions. These games don't just sit next to each other in Nintendo's catalog, they speak to each other, complete each other, and ultimately reveal that the greatest adventures aren't about defeating evil or claiming destiny. They're about who we become in the process, what we carry with us afterward, and whether we can find meaning even when the clock runs out and the moon begins to fall.